Hey, how's it going? Thank you everybody for showing up. This is the August edition of the LA Sound Mixers video chat, where we invite everybody from the audience to help participate in these topics that we're going to pick apart today. And really glad that you could be here. Today's Saturday, August the 5th. It is 10:07 a.m. here in good old Los Angeles. And I hope you're doing well wherever you are. And thank you for joining us. Really glad you could be here. We're covering some pretty cool stuff today. The highlights are basically going to be allowing Blas to properly finish his talk that he started last month, and on how to nurture and grow and manage your freelance business. Because no matter if you're a boom operator, a sound utility, we're all working freelance from project to project. So and a lot of us have gear that we rent to production, so those are big expenses that we have to manage and make sure that it gets paid for properly and through the work. And so I really wanted to give him the time to finish this topic off the right way, and to give a proper time for Q&A to everybody in the audience. If you have anything in the audience, if you want to add to the conversation, or just add some thoughts, or ask for a little bit of clarification if you need it for your own situation. This audience comes from all over the world, so don't be afraid to jump in and ask for some clarifications. Totally fine with that along the way, as long as we just keep it brief and keep it moving. That'd be a great thing. I was unable to be here last month. I was in Mexico City with my family, and by the time this chat started, I had just gotten off a plane and was very groggy in a hotel. We flew an overnight to Mexico City. So it was a lot of fun, but I want to thank and Lamps and Adam for jumping in, and Jana as well, who just disappeared because she doesn't like to show her face on here. But the three of them have been so rock solid in supporting this chat and stepping in when it's necessary, and running the ship. And honestly, I'm looking for more people to do that. This chat happens roughly once a month, and then we would love to do more just single interview type things. Anything that can help us get closer to the goal of mentorship and education for people. That's what we really want, what we want to do. And so I want to thank them for stepping in and covering it last month, so that I could be with my family on vacation. It was really cool. And yeah, so if you or I'll put out that call now, if you're interested in taking part in helping produce this podcast, or this video chat, whatever you want to call it, reach out to me. Would love to get you to have you be a part of it. And we're looking for people to run the chat in our absence, because this really should exist. This chat shouldn't be centered around any one person or any one thing. We want it to continue on without us.
And the pay is very competitive.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So, but cool. But so a little bit of housekeeping. If you do want to chat, you can. If you're too bashful to speak, you can put stuff in the meeting chat if you want to. I can't guarantee that I'll see it. Jana usually keeps an eye on that, and we'll do our best to.
I'll be happy to keep an eye on that, Chris.
Okay, cool, and I'll do that while you're talking. So, but yeah, so use the meeting chat, or just use the raise hand function under reactions. Click on that, use the raise hand functions, and we'll see it there, and we'll call on you when we when we see it. So but we definitely encourage participation from the audience, and so be sure and do that. Also, it's people here from all over the place, so click the rename function, and if you can add your city where you are, that would be great, because we'd love to know where you are. There's a lot of us here in Los Angeles. This group kind of started here, but since it's centered around mentorship and education, we've had people from all over the world start to join, and it's we just love to know where you're coming from. We've been
and also your social security number.
Yes, but and just so you know, all of these Zoom meetings, they're always free. Any gathering that we do, whether it's live and in person here in Los Angeles, or if we do gatherings through our sponsor KTech, which I'll talk about them in a minute. We've done now 6 events in Europe. We did 3 in 2019, and we just did 3 more this past year, or this year in May. All those events are free, so no, we never charge for anything. Any in-person events, they're always either member supported or sponsorship supported, and we go through great pains to make sure that anybody can walk through the door. It doesn't cost you any money. The only thing I've actually charged money for was the flea market, which we have coming up on September 9th. It's a Saturday. I charged $20 for the sellers to pay to cover the cost of their table rental, and also make sure they show up. But yeah, so that's it. And speaking of, that's happening here in LA on September 9th, Saturday, which is it's going to be fun. There's already 10 sellers on board. I have room for 8 more. So hopefully we'll get it filled up with really good sellers. There's always we've done this maybe half a dozen times over the years. We've spread it out through the different venues in town. We've had some at True, we've had some at Wilcox Sound. We even had one at Film Tools recently. And we've also had it at Audio Department. This time we're back at True, just because it's summertime and they have a big indoor space that we can use. So that's just us being practical. It's for keeping everybody out of the direct sunlight. But hopefully you can join us for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And so let's see what's next. Oh yes, I want to say a huge thank you to K-Tech for sponsoring us. They are the creators of fine boom poles, sound bags, microphone shock mounts, and fuzzy windscreens. And they just came out with a new pole. They added one to their line. They have a section of they have a brand of 5-section pole called the Mighty Boom. And they've come out with a 14-foot version of it. It's the KP14V, V for 5-section. So it's very cool. Up until then, they only had 10-foot and 18-foot in that section, in that selection. So they've added the 14 in there. And then they also have the line of 6-section Mighty Booms, which are really cool because they close down a lot shorter since they're broken up over 6 sections. So they have those available in 6-foot, 9-foot, 12, 16, and 20. So those are really great poles too. Check them out. And one of the other things that I think they maybe don't get enough credit for is the shock mounts they make. They're right in that window of being really robust. They can take a lot of punishment. They do the job of isolating your boom mic, but they can also take a beating, and they're not too expensive, which is really cool. So the KSM shock mount is the one that I started with, and I still have 4 in my kit. That are, I have Sonellas, I have other things too that I like for certain things, but my K-Techs have always been there. And I remember one time when I was just getting started, they have a lever that you can use to tighten and loosen and articulate. And in haste, I was doing E&G work. I left the boom against the wall. It fell over. That little piece broke. So, and I only have one shock mount at the time. So here I am using a pair of pliers to do the articulation, and I sent them a quick email, and they sent me 4 just for free. And because I didn't expect them to do that. I was like, I broke it. It was my fault. Let me know where I can buy more or what the part is called. And they were just like, we'll send it to you. So they
they sent you 4 because they knew it could happen again, right?
Yes, obviously. So yeah, they sent me 4.
They didn't trust them.
No.
Exactly. Here.
Yeah, I'd like to say something about K-Tech.
Yeah.
We live in Los Angeles. Some of us don't live in Los Angeles. But for me, as a person who is based, in this town, there are all of these opinions. It's the Ford versus Chevy versus Mopar, or Windows versus Mac. It seems like we tend to kind of gravitate toward the poles like that. And the same thing happens with boom poles, and everybody has strong opinions about Ambient or Loon or VDB or K-Tech. And I think one of the most important things when you're dealing with equipment that breaks down and that you're using all the time is, obviously it has to be good, but the service. And for me in Los Angeles, the proximity, because they're in Carlsbad in San Diego, which is a couple hours away. Mm-hmm. And to know that they're very close and you can get things last minute, that you can get maybe even a replacement pole where they fix something. For me, that's worth more than knowing that the Ambient pole is 2 ounces lighter. That's my point.
Yeah, and the good thing too is that they've been working really hard since 2017-18 to expand. They have a lot more dealers now in Europe, and so that really helps them. They already have that heart for wanting to, keep that E&G mixer in the field working. That's what they really gets them up every morning. And now that they have so many more dealers in Europe, they're able to give you that same kind of support while even if you don't live in Southern California. So we've been a benefit of their mentality of supporting their customers for a long time. But now that they have more dealerships in Europe, and Tino is there now. He's in London today, running around, checking on dealers and doing things. And he's going to be back up in Germany next week for 2 weeks. So yeah, so it's just a great company. Check them out. Get your hands on the pole. I know every time people ask me about boom poles, I recommend K-Tech, but I also say go to the dealers, put the poles in your hands, because that will tell you. Work the collar locks, feel how rigid it is, what kind of resistance it does back against you, and use your hand. Your hands will tell you what's right. So find whatever's right for you. But definitely give those a shot.
One thing to add, though, your advice to go and actually spend some time with these poles is very important, but also not forgetting what Blas is saying about, the support, which you obviously can only hear about. And I can certainly put in the word for the fact that their support is stellar, and pretty unmatched by any other company I've ever dealt with. And also for a lot of the younger people, if there are any here, you have to remember that in the early days, certainly in the early days of my career, there were no companies making fish poles for us. I mean, everyone had to sort of make your own out of a painter's pole or whatever. And I have a picture of me booming with one of the fish poles that I made out of one of the legs of a 3-leg camera tripod, a still camera tripod, which, that worked out fine, like for 1.5 jobs, and then it fell apart. And there were very few companies, if any, certainly even before K-Tech, that were making, I'm sure Gary.
I was using a paint pole. I made my own. I mean, I started in the 60s. I'm sorry, I'm really old.
Ooh, you beat me. Jeez.
Yeah, I beat you. But yeah, and I've got some. I wish I had them handy, but great pictures of me with the paint pole with long hair and my shirt off. Oh, very sexy.
Oh, you got to find that and show it to us. We want to see that.
Even if you don't show it to the world, I'd love to see that.
You got it. Okay.
Yes. Somewhere I have a picture of Bo Baker standing on the side of the road with a huge 816 and a blimp and a pistol grip. And I'm like, yeah, those are the days. So,
well,
but very cool. So yeah, so it's a great company, and they've always supported us, and they've been really cool about they've taken us to Europe twice. We did it in 2019. We went to Munich, Paris, and London, and just this past May we went to Berlin, Milan, and Rome, and they were really amazing 2-week trips where we got to have a panel discussion on production sound that I organized, and then we also brought our friend Ken Strain, who taught his boom operators boom operators class called the Boom Right seminar, which he did himself, which he's always a great seminar to watch. So many good informative things that honestly, for the most of us learning it on our own just by trial and error, it's really nice to hear somebody like Ken articulate some of these finer points, and then it really gives us a sense of, sometimes it's, oh wow, I didn't know I could do it that way, but other times it's like, it's a verification that okay, so I'm not that far off. Like, so just to hear somebody articulate those points like that, for something that's so nuanced like booming, it's a really good thing to see.
Hey, Chris, can you enable screen sharing for me for just like 1 second?
I can. What do you got for us? Let's see. And see sharing options. There we go. Okay, go.
Is it Gary's picture? Is it safe for work?
No, it's not Gary's. It's me. Yes. So can you see that?
The hair, man, kills me. I love it.
So I had hair too, Gary. All right.
Show us this. Do you remember?
Right. This is priceless.
It was some industrial something or other. People see this picture and they say, "Were you trying to get that guy on the phone back there?" I said, "No, somebody's going to come into the foreground and I'll be perfect." So, well,
nowadays you're, you put that picture out and everybody will have a comment about something about it.
Yeah, or they'll say, "What the hell are you doing?" Exactly. Didn't you just put a mic on him?
It's like you realize maybe the cameras weren't rolling when that picture was taken. Like,
right.
So many assumptions that get made. It's a little crazy.
Thank you, Chris.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, so yeah, so anyway, big thanks to K-Tech, Brenda Clemmy and Tino Liberatori are the two principals there, and they do a really wonderful job supporting us. So keep them in mind when you're looking for cool stuff. So let's see. Oh yeah, it reminds me. I've still got to write. I wrote in the. I guess it was the not August, not in the June issue of the LA Sound Mixers newsletter. I wrote the first of what's supposed to be 3 articles on our trip to Berlin there, and so I've got to follow up with the second article that took us, the part that took us to Milan, because that was an absolute adventure and a little bit of a train wreck. But you know, everybody as always comes together in their good humor and spirit of support for one another. We made it through, but it's a pretty cool story. I've been working on it, so I'm going to get that in the hopefully in next month's newsletter. If you want to sign up for the LA Sound Mixers newsletter, please reach out to me, lasoundmixer@gmail.com, and I'll make sure you get the right link. And it's also, I think the link is also up in the pin post on our private discussion group. But if you want to get added to either one of those things, just reach out to us. Let us know. You know, you can always slide into the DMs. But first, let's see. We're going to get to our main topic in a bit, but there's a couple of things I wanted to cover. And let's see, Doc would be next up. But first, while Doc is getting ready, because I love that Doc Justice is here, I wanted to ask Gary Bourgeois a question, because I'm so glad that he's here, by the way. I don't know if you guys know who he is. He is a re-recording mixer that started out as a production sound mixer and has had a long and storied career, and I'm really glad that he's here. He came last month, and I was so sad that I missed it, but I'm glad he's back. He is serving with the Academy of Motion Picture on the sound branch, and I wanted him to tell us a little bit about what the sound branch is responsible for, and so we could start with that, and then I do have a follow-up question after that, if you're okay with that, Gary. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot.
Yeah, yes, you are.
Just generally what the sound branch is responsible for. And I guess the follow-up question would be, a lot of us are in this group are people that are getting started in their career, first year, second year, some of us 5 years. I've been at it 18 years, but you know, I still have the enthusiasm of somebody who just started.
I'm in my 53rd year, so
nice. So but what the work that AMPAS does, how does that affect people who are really new in the craft? Like, for some people getting started just buying their first bag rig, how does the work that AMPAS does, how is that going to affect my life? And so there, I want to try and bridge that gap of understanding there a little bit.
Yeah. You know, first of all, I'm the governor of the sound branch.
Okay.
It completely doesn't mean that I know anything more than anybody else. Fortunately, there's a whole support system there. But first of all, the good news that I wanted to mention that a lot of people don't realize is that one of the governors is Peter Devlin, and there had never been, until he became governor last year, there had never been a production mixer that was a governor at the Academy. And there was a push by both him and Lee and Mark and a whole bunch of production mixers to try to get a greater profile within the sound branch itself, so that the possibility might exist that they become a governor at some point. They came in with like guns drawn, only to find out that the 3 governors at the time were just like, welcome, come on in. We want to help you to do this. So they were switched from being in the re-recording mixer category to what they call other. And their chances rose immensely because of that. And so within months of their great efforts, we got Peter in as a governor, and he's been so helpful. And I think what happens also because of that is that there's a 690 sound branch members. We got a really large branch, and we represent the editors, the re-recording mixers, and then what's called others, which is like production mixers, engineers, sound directors, blah blah blah. But what's happened because of that profile shift and having Peter in is that other members are getting to learn and find out more about what the production mixer's job is. And the bottom line, I mean, one of the big issues for me as a governor is to make sure that the whole sound branch understands what each person does. A production mixer might not know what a sound designer or a scoring mixer does, or whatever, what their job really entails. But most of post-production have no idea of what a production mixer does. And production mixers have such a huge impact, the biggest impact on what we do in post-production. And the relationship that you guys have in with not just the director, but even the producer and the actors themselves and whatnot. And most post-production people don't like really get what it is that you do. And I think that part of my job and part of our job as governors is to make sure that the membership in total has a greater understanding of what each of our jobs are, and also within the academy itself, because all academy members vote, and there's many categories that we simply don't know about, yet we vote.
Yeah, we're talking about voting for the Oscars.
Yes, for the Oscars. And when for instance, wardrobe and makeup, I know squat about, but you guys know way more about that than I would ever know about that, because you're there in production on the set. So there's always been this division, and I sort of really want to take on the fact that that we're trying to educate not just the membership but also the academy itself.
Right.
And within the academy, our representation of our members is our key asset. And I was actually on the governance committee, which basically decides on rule changes and stuff. So it has a great influence. And I mean, being a member of the academy is a fairly prestigious thing. You get there's tons of opportunities for education, outreach, membership globally. We have a presence in many different countries. And we are expanding that exponentially, and our diversity is creating an international presence with the academy at festivals and all around the world, and we're expanding our outreach completely. So I mean, that's part of a bunch of things that we're doing. I think quite often membership, when somebody gets in, they had no idea about all the different things we do, the museum, the archives, right. Students around the world, the gold membership programs, mentoring, all these things. So that's all part of it as a quick overview. I'll let you go, but the bottom line is it's a pretty cool thing to join and be part of and exercise your influence. There you go.
And so one other question, when it comes to voting for the Oscars, is it just the sound branch members that vote for the sound Oscar winners, or does all Academy members vote for all categories?
What the sound branch members vote for are the nominees.
Okay.
And then everybody in the Academy votes for
every award.
The winner. Yeah, every award. And this is why the education of the other members are so important. I mean, there are even other, governors and whatnot that they just don't know what we do. They think of us just as a technical arm, and we have to educate them as to our creative input in all levels.
And I'll take a shot out there and say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I really feel like for those people who are just getting started, with their bag rig and they're doing smaller projects, still maybe are waiting to join the union, that kind of stuff, if you've ever stepped on set and felt like, you know what, sound doesn't really have much respect on this particular set, or it's being overlooked or things like that, I feel like personally the work that AMPAS does in representing the soundcraft to the broader filmmaking community, as well as CAS does this as well. This is the work that they do that will eventually, when you get up to working in bigger, more formally run union shows, bigger budgets, then hopefully that the influence, what the work they're doing now is what's you're gonna merge with that at that point, and hopefully you will have a little more consideration when it comes to how the resources you get to play with in order to get your job done, whether it's, you know, just getting paid properly for your gear rental because it's respected part of what is, you know, what is required to make the production happen. How many people you can hire and have on your crew, because, you know, that's the thing. And I feel like I said, Gary, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the work that AMPAS does and CAS, this is the work that will definitely, that correlates to us getting a little bit more respect on set when we get there. And
without a doubt. But by the way, it's not just on set. It's across the board, and that's why the education of both the producers and everybody as to what we do is so important. Insofar as you know, they think of you guys just as a technical thing on set, and then when they find out how much the actors rely on a great relationship with the production mixer, etc., what a big difference it makes for your film. But it's also, for instance, in post-production, young people coming out of school, whatnot, they're all told that they need a sound designer, and they don't even know what a sound designer is. And most people in sound don't even know what a sound designer is, for God's sake. So, you know, creating some sort of clarity and knowledge of all the various aspects that encompass the team, that's kind of like the biggest education.
Yeah. So we have a couple of questions. The two people that probably don't need to raise their hand are raising their hands. So go for it, Blas. What's up?
Yeah, by the way, Chris, let's see if somebody raised their hands. Oh, here we go. I was trying to follow the rules, as Jeff did as well. Yeah. So I'm sure Gary is way ahead of me here, but I'm going to submit a couple of things. The first one is that this is a long-term process, and it starts with the education. And I have a son who is of college age, and he has done the college visits and got the spiel from the people and everything, both in education and in training. As a matter of fact, I just mentored somebody just last week. Petrushka was there as well, a nonprofit organization that helps young people learn media storytelling, disadvantaged and minority children, so they can tell their own stories, etc. And so we were helping them put together a team and how to, acquire sound on set and all that stuff. And it's amazing how a lot of institutions, a lot of professionals, producers, but specifically in the educational environment, how much camera is the focus of everything. Acquiring pictures is the thing. I simply can't. I don't even have a chip on my shoulder about this. It's just not even about me. It's just I struggle to understand how they don't even think that somebody is going to be saying things, and somebody has to be recording what they're saying, and that's half the story. It's crazy to me. It literally is crazy. When my son,
may I just for what it's worth,
please.
This is where experience makes all the difference in the world, because every director, when they first start out, they're shooting on their iPhone. I don't know, whatever they're shooting, right? It's all about picture, and sound doesn't mean anything. And then the very first time they go to do the sound, and the sound is shit because it was their mother that was the production mixer. And it's a slow build over about a 5 or 6 film, director's process, where they start to slowly realize the importance of capturing great sound on the set, because otherwise your final product is going to sound like a porno. And we all know that we turn the sound off on a porno anyway. So
I have no idea what you're talking about.
No, I don't know. Yeah. But the bottom line is it takes them to be swacked upside the head at least 4 or 5 times before they realize I've got to hire a pro. And once they hear the difference between on mic, finally, and how you can actually, the importance of the reference point of great production sound is that it allows me to create an ambiance, a soup that everything sits in, that's very real. It allows me to soar with the music or whatnot, because I'm not having to be guarded and pull back everything because the sound is unrecognizable. The more I have the clarity and presence of the sound, the more I have a palette to work with in the final mix. And when they start to realize, they only realize this through their own money being spent and being thwarted because their end product is not understandable. They have to learn this with experience. Now, there are some schools that teach really well, and I'm not saying necessarily the big schools here in LA, but Vancouver Film School is outstanding. Chapman College, outstanding. University of Miami, outstanding.
Well, CSUN out here does a very good job.
And Savannah College, as you know, with David Bondalevich, he's now retired. But the bottom line is there are some schools that actually teach the importance of all the crafts and how they interrelate. A lot of schools just teach about theory, doesn't do you much good.
Yeah, but I was just going to say that there's a culture, and you, as individuals, directors will eventually learn that lesson, and God bless them, they have to. But as a culture, I mean, I just literally last week we were putting together the how to acquire sound and the gear and checking the gear and showing them how, access and this whole thing. And they were planning on having a one-man band person acquiring sound. So already there's the culture that sound is the guy with the bag and with the hands up here. I worked on a mockumentary project a few years ago. And so they had to do like a tilt up, and the guy, the boom guy was there, and it was a gag with the person. And they asked me to put a bag on him and to have the headphones and whatever. And I tried to tell them that in an interview like this, that person would not be wearing a bag. They would be, no, we want to see the bag. And of course, that's how it ended up in the movie. So these are small little things that in another setting I would call microaggressions. But it's a culture. And
that culture with the camera thing, that's understandable. And you're right, it is a culture. I hate to say it, but 7 out of 10 times a director will walk in on a big mix stage with a console that's the size of huge console with zillions of buttons, and they think that it's completely technical. And right. And some will just treat you like a technician, and you have to be patient enough to educate them that you're part of the process here of presenting a tableau. It would be the same as looking at a piano and seeing all the keys and saying, oh, you must be a technician, or a cinematographer looking at the camera and it's just so complex and saying, oh, he's a technician. It's just part of it is the media themselves don't know what we do, and therefore they promote falsehoods, misinformation. But it just takes time for anybody in the business in control to learn just how important all the connecting dots are.
Yeah, one of the things I've always tried to say, at least during interviews and stuff, is that we might work with technical tools, but we are making artistic choices that help tell the story in real time.
All day long, 4,000 times.
And I equate it usually to the camera operator. It's like they might have a machine on their shoulder, but the frame that they're interpreting in real time, that's the artistic choice. And that's what we're doing, the same exact thing. Let's go to Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Gary, for filling in what the Academy is doing, because we're recently doing a lot more than ever before certainly in relation to production sound mixing, and anything that we can do to elevate, or I don't want to say elevate because that's sort of the wrong word, but to educate so that people know where production sound fits into the overall picture will benefit us all, even the person who's just starting out, that they won't automatically assume that the lay of the land is that they're going to get no respect. But you also, when you're on the set, no matter how green you are, you need to earn that also. You need to, once we've brought the education up to the point that you're capturing an original performance from an actor, that there's a value there that you don't want to lose, that, it's a big responsibility, and you need to take it seriously. And you can't say, well, I'm a sound mixer because, a couple of $100, I got myself a Zoom recorder and I got out there and I recorded something and everyone listened to it and nobody said anything. That doesn't mean that you're really doing the job. I mean, bottom line, it is a job, but it's also an artistic endeavor. In other words, it's something where you have to be thinking about so many things that are important. And I'm just pleased with the success that our little ad hoc Academy group has accomplished. Getting Peter in there and And now, boom operators can join the Academy, which is just a milestone in my book.
That was a big one. And
Yeah.
also mixed text and,
Yep.
and first assistant sound editors. My daughter finally is in
Oh,
that.
that's great. Good to hear.
But the most important education of all is the education within our own branch of what we all do. Because post-production doesn't understand production.
Gary, I've told the story hundreds of times about being on the mix stage with a very experienced re-recording mixer who said, I've done 4 movies that you've done, and we never have any camera noise problems. Why is that? And I said, well, that's Don. And they said, oh, digital, that's digital on board. And I said, no, Don Sufal, my boom operator.
A human being, a person making choices.
And they literally, their jaw dropped. They had no idea that the boom operator had any effect on whether they're going to have camera noise, or not. I mean, it's just, it blew my mind.
The subtleties get lost. Yeah. I mean, there was a time though when 695 covered all of production and post sound together.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I think part of the divide today is now that all the post-production people got
there's so many reasons why there are people that have an agenda and want the divide. But I think that the other thing that happened with our Academy group is the discovery that even the people in post were quite surprised that we've been as marginalized as we are, and that even a lot of people in post feel marginalized.
Well, that's the thing. And speaking
talk to a scoring mixer sometime.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's just.
Well, speaking of being marginalized, there was a friend of mine posted on our discussion page, I think it was yesterday or the day before, and I put the link to it in the chat if you want to see it. But it's it was basically a 327 word article that was basically kind of just kind of a flippant spit wad throwing at the wall thing of all it was written by Zach Scharf. And the headline of the story was Oppenheimer dialogue might be hard to hear because Christopher Nolan refuses to re-record actors. An artistic choice some disagree with, and that part's in quotes. So basically what they're saying is you can't hear it in the theater because they don't want to ADR. It's like, wow, where do you even begin? And it's only 327
the whole Christopher Nolan thing is an entirely.
My book report would have been a D if I had turned in 327 words on anything. But it seems like and I did my own little rant on the page, but it feels like every story that I've ever read from a writer from Variety or Hollywood Reporter or any of the other industry trades, they never understand a clear, concise understanding of what it takes to get the soundtrack in place for the audience to hear it. They don't. None of them really understand it.
No.
So you just gave me a great idea, and I'll cut out shortly. But you just gave me a great idea. I think that the sound governors have to put the reporters from Variety and Hollywood Reporter in a room, sit them down, and educate them as to what each of us do, so that they can get it right in the future.
Gary, that's exactly what our Academy group is working on now.
Good.
Is that whole end is getting the publicists and getting the people that set up the screenings and the people that publish the articles and all that. We're working on it.
But it was a story that was put out there, and it was really borders on clickbait because there's really no sources, there's no discussion, there was no interviews, there was no supporting anything other than this kind of hearsay, stuff. And
it stirs up so much down the line. It's awful, guys. I have to go now. So I'm sorry to take up so much of your time. I just wanted to come and just listen to what you were doing. But
the last thing I wanted to say though was the watching pornos. I mean, maybe it's because I'm a sound guy, but I always want to turn it up to 11. And I
don't want to hear about it. Bye, everybody.
We're going to leave that one alone.
Yeah.
Take care.
Good seeing you, Gary.
On that note, thank you, Gary. I would before we leave this topic alone, unless anybody's got something to say about it, the production mixer they're referring to in that story, they don't name him, which is good because I don't like the way the story reflects him, but it's Willie Burton. And Willie Burton is two-time Oscar winner on 7 nominations. He won for Bird, the Charlie Parker Story in 1988, and he also won for Dreamgirls in 2000.
No, Willie's a good guy, and I'm sure he did a very good job.
You could not have a more accomplished sound mixer in that spot, and he's worked with Nolan, a ton of times. So they obviously have a collaboration and a partnership, but just the story rubbed me the wrong way. And
Oh
I
yeah,
see
oh
these,
yeah.
honestly, I see these a lot. They always do it to me.
Of
I don't
course.
post it to the group. I just roll my eyes and I keep
And
going.
they're
Somebody
counting
posted it,
on
and I'm like,
the fact that there are no sources and no one can really follow up on it, and they're
Yeah.
talking to the masses who don't understand any of this to begin
Yeah.
with.
I mean, my junior English teacher would have given me an F for that story, without sources, without thought, without any kind of, background or anything. It's just no resolution to it at all. It was just like, what the hell was that? So anyway, we'll leave that alone now. We'll move on to the next thing.
The next thing is Doc.
Next thing is Doc. I appreciate
There he is.
Yeah.
You can't hide from us.
I know. I appreciate
Tried.
Doc making it. He is the admin of Strictly Sound Gear, the Facebook group called Strictly Sound Gear, and he's going to give us an overview of what's going on in our world of gear. I know we have had some new products come out. Deity put out a new wireless. There's a few things, but Doc is the one who's got his finger on the pulse of that world, and I really appreciate that he's here. Doc, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Hey, everybody.
Glad to have you back. You missed last week, right?
I
Or last month.
missed last month.
Yeah, as did I.
I was off celebrating a wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Give Lindsay our best.
Let's switch over and be official here.
Ooh, look at that.
So a few things have happened in the past few months regarding gear. As Chris said, I run the Strictly Sound Gear page on Facebook, which is kind of the opposite of what we've been doing on the Zooms here. It's just the gear and none of the processes, politics, or artistry of sound.
I don't care if you're an artist.
So let's jump into it. The biggest announcements happened very recently, and we are looking at new products from Sound Devices. This here is the Sound Devices A20TX, the much requested follow-up to their A20 transmitter. This is compatible with all of their current digital A20 offerings, including the Nexus and the new Nexus Go receiver, which we will also get into. Some cool things about this transmitter. The first thing you'll notice is the e-ink display. This is either the same or a similar display as to what Sennheiser is now doing on their transmitters. E-ink allows the transmitter to display information even when the transmitter is powered off or there's no batteries in it. So it's a persistent display. So it will show the last frequency that it was on, the name of it, if you've named it, battery life, and so on. This transmitter has a very wide tuning range because it's all software programmable. So it can go, there are different pockets, but it can go from 169 megahertz in the VHF range all the way up to 1.5 gigahertz with lots of spacing in between. So for those who are traveling, you'll be able to use legal frequencies in whatever country you're in at the time. The big reason for this transmitter is the runtime. They say up to 12 hours battery runtime. They do not say at what output power that is because it's a little cagey. The previous 820 mini got 5 hours on 2 milliwatt output power, I believe. So I assume this is 12 hours at 2 milliwatts, but that hasn't been stated explicitly. It also takes 3 AA batteries. I think AA. Yes, AA batteries to get to that 12-hour battery life. So it's not, obviously in the naming convention, there is the mini if you need a small version, but this is not a small transmitter by any means, but it does have all of the functionality of the A20 mini and everything you'd expect. It does have a built-in 32-bit float recorder. Again, if you're in the US, that's record or transmit. Outside the US, record and transmit. And then this thing, retail price is $2,450. The mini is $2,200. To go along with this new transmitter, they released the A20 Nexus Go, which is a new version of their, this is the limited version of their A20 Nexus receiver. So this is a 4-channel receiver that can be expanded to 6 or 8 channels, whereas the full size A20, I shouldn't say full size, they're the same size, where the full A20 Nexus can get 8, 12, or 16 channels. So this thing, 4 channels, true diversity receiver, has the entire tuning range of their transmitters, does have flexible powering, so you can power it DC, AC, or via the 8 series recorders. You can take a look at the back of it for anybody who is familiar with their A20 Nexus. You'll see that this is the same thing, just with some connectors missing. So a D sub missing. There is no Dante on this. So it's the same box, just limited in functionality. This receiver retails for $8,500, $8,495 specifically. And then you can pay to add more channels. You can pay an extra $2,500 to add 2 channels, to go up to a 6-channel receiver, or another $2,500 on top of that to make it an 8-channel receiver. You also have the ability to rent channels. You can rent 2 channels for 7-day rental for $250. They also have a 30-day rental. So I normally don't put any opinions or spin on these gear things, but I will say we are now in an age where the consumers are going to decide if these hardware pay locks, these hardware pay walls, are going to be an accepted practice or not. So, you know, this is a receiver that is capable of receiving 8 channels of audio if you pay up to use its full potential. So we are at it'll be an interesting experiment, I guess, to see how this is accepted, not just in the production sound world, but in the broadcast world, the church and theater and venue.
I guess they already tested the waters on the software side with selling Dugan and selling the mix, right? The mix.
So yes, they do sell plugins,
right,
which I equate to, you know, you purchase a computer and then you buy software separately. This is more like if you bought a computer with 16 gigabytes of RAM, but it limited you to 8 gigabytes of RAM unless you pay more to unlock the rest of the RAM. So we're at an inflection point is all I'm saying. And I'll be curious to see what the market bears.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I will say something real quick about the pay-as-you-go. Tesla has, you can buy 2 versions of Teslas. One has normal range and the other one has extended range. And it's all about how many batteries there are in it. And it's cheaper for Tesla to make all of the cars with all the batteries with the extended range. And then you can, down the road, years later, you can pay extra to unlock. Let's say you bought the normal range, but you are aware that the range is there. And so you go to the dealership and they don't really do anything to the car. They just unlock a code and now suddenly you have the extra battery bank is available to you. So the concept for sound devices is very similar. it's cheaper for them to make all of the machines the same way. They don't have to be tailor making machines with 8 channels or 12 or 16 or whatever. And so personally, as a consumer, I'm not thrilled with that. But if this allows the company to have an economy of scale and presumably offer a more competitive price for their products, I think that's the right way to go as a manufacturer.
Okay.
Yeah, there isn't any direct parallel, although what you just brought up with Tesla is the closest parallel, because I know people are comparing it to, purchasing software and then having to get plugins that are another, which is really a totally different deal than when you're dealing with hardware like this. But the Tesla parallel is definitely meaningful. But I agree with what Doc is saying. We have to see whether the marketplace is going to embrace it or not. And who knows?
Yeah, there are plenty of examples of other industries using this model in the car world. BMW and others are now charging subscription prices to turn on the heated seats, and things like that, other hardware paylocks. We're seeing amongst all sectors if it's accepted or not, but since we are such an insular community, we'll have better ideas as to who accepts it and who doesn't. It'll just be interesting moving forward. Yamaha, we have spoken in the past about Yamaha's DM3 console. Well, now they have come out with the DM7 console. I haven't seen the word flagship thrown around just yet, but this appears to me to be their newest flagship console. We are looking at, this has 72 input mixing channels, 72 mono channels, 48 mix buses. There are 16 faders plus an expansion pack. This is the do-all end-all right now of Yamaha's newest. So when we are talking for touring, we're talking for large-scale reality shows, anyone who is currently using the CL series, which is now over 10 years old. This is that new. Any flavor of audio that you can dream of, AES, Dante, AES 67, 42, 3, it's all in here. Everything is packed in. This retails for $14,999. They also have this expansion controller that you can get for another $6,000, or you can you can get the whole thing for $20,000 total.
There's no bag version, right?
You know what? There are some shows that will expect you to carry it.
Just kidding.
Yeah. So touching on our friends at, speaking of things you can carry, our friends at Radius Windshield, Simon Davies, who we've talked about previously, is he was the founder of Rycoat, which had sold to Vitek, which became Videndum, which Simon eventually worked through his contract and now is starting Radius Windshields. We have some good imagery of their new suspension, which they have renamed the Rad 1, Rad 2, and Rad 3. They've changed it. It was called the SSM, but upon realizing that there are a lot of products in our industry named SSM, they've changed it. The most interesting thing you'll see right off the bat when you take a look at these is that the mic is suspended upside down, right? The leers, the liars, I've never known how to pronounce that word.
I think it's a liar.
Liar?
Yeah, it's a musical instruments used to have lyres on them. It's the same kind of term.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm smarter now. So yeah, having these upside down, they also have like a belt in them to prevent them from coming out of the lyres. And then there are different weights for the lyres themselves, for the suspension around it. It's going to be fascinating to see how Radius moves forward, and these new products are going to be a welcome addition. Speaking of fun, DPA released their ultimate recording kit. This is, I mean, a vat, a cauldron of microphones. I don't know. You pick your favorite word here, but this is awesome. I'm not even gonna say all of the mics they have, but it's basically, you know, 4 4099, 6 4099 DC2s, a kick microphone, a bunch of twin diagram microphones. This is basically everything they make for recording that's not a lavalier. And the retail price on it, oh, I just lost it.
Yikes. Yikes, whatever it is.
$47,000.
The world's most easily stealable $50,000 case.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, one shot at it.
Let's take a look inside just because it's so cool. There's 3 layers. This is just the top layer.
Wow.
You have the middle layer of mics and the bottom layer, and then below that are all the accessories, and there's 1,000 accessories and clips and clamps and clumps and climps and whatever you need. But it's very cool. They also have come out with less expensive kits. They have a studio recording kit, a broadcast kit. So what they're trying to do is make it easier for facilities to buy one thing and be set for, I don't know, the next 100 years.
Nice. See, that would mess with my OCD, because as soon as one thing is missing, I'd be like, it's not.
Well, you got to buy a new kit.
Fleet. Yes. Yeah. You need a backup.
You lose one mic, it's time for a whole new kit.
But then the backup is not complete. I don't know. There'll still always be a world in where there's something that is not where it's supposed to be.
That's right. Well, for if you've lost something or want to replace something, lastly on our list here is that Reverb is having what they're calling the Summer of Savings sale. It lasts until Monday. Lots of well-known brands in the music and interface industry. Lots of great headphones and guitar amps and synthesizers are on sale. So for all of us who got into sound from being rehabilitated musicians, this is a way to get your fix on the cheap.
It's a good site. Occasionally you find some really good deals there.
Yes, there are also, it's also a great place to buy and sell used gear. I actually sold a Yamaha console on Reverb and had a great experience with it. So recommended. That's all the latest and greatest. We'll continue to talk more on the Strictly Sound Gear forum about all of this new gear, about all the previous gear. People get to post their experiences with gear, and we'll keep going and see what happens in September. September actually brings IBC in Amsterdam, which is the biggest trade show outside of Las Vegas. So it's sort of NAB for Europe. So we'll see that in mid-September. So there could be some announcements leading up to that, particularly from our overseas friends. And we'll see. Other than that, hopefully people are able to find some good used gear deals out there with all of the folks that aren't working. A lot of folks are selling off gear, and it's a good time to be buying gear from those folks.
Very good. Well, man, thank you so much for all this really great information. It's very cool. And I'm glad you're back, man. I'm glad you're able to be with Lindsay last month, but I'm glad you're back with us this month. So, man, I appreciate it.
Rock on.
Yeah, Strictly Sound Gear on Facebook. If you're on there, hit that group up. It's a wealth of really great information on gear, and Doc is always there to keep the train on the rails and keep the conversation moving forward. And yeah, so it was very cool.
I'm a geek and I live for the geeks.
Yes, and he's also a lover of baseball, which that's what I usually send most of my texts to him about, or how the Phillies are doing. So it's a Philly boy at heart. Yes, there you go. Very cool. Well, cool. Thanks so much. We're going to move on. If there's no questions for Doc, if now, speak up, forever hold your peace. Doc, there was a couple of things in the chat. Not all of them I was able to read, but I don't know if you want to peruse those. But thanks again. That's very cool. We'll move on to our main topic, which is it's going to be Blas finishing up what he started last month, which I was sorry to miss, but I got to watch it on video later. And it was really informative as always. He probably has the most comprehensive and holistic approach to running a freelance business. And, I'm always tickled pink when I find people that are actually okay with talking about it and getting in front of people. And Blas is one of those people that is just very articulate on the subject. And I agree with probably 90% of what he says. So, but always great to have him. Blas, yeah, so if you could just do the quick bullet points of what you covered last time, and then we can wrap it up the way you see fit. And as always, any of you in the audience, if you have any questions, speak up. If we can keep it short and keep it moving, we'd love to be able to answer your questions along the way. And
thank you, Chris. Thank you. So I'm going to run by the bullet points as briefly as I can, just to kind of recap what was discussed. And then maybe I'll remember some little tips that I want to add. And then we're going to go to the Q&A. Hopefully you guys have questions. And I guess I'll put my email address here so that you guys can, if you guys feel like you want to ask me any questions, business related stuff, I'll be happy to answer via email. So for those of you who don't know, I have been working on this kind of negotiation workshop for many years now. We've taught a few at the local. We kind of stopped during the pandemic, and I'm hoping that we will renew it because they're contained. We do them with 8 people, and it's more of a workshop. It's a whole day. There's food and everything, so it's pretty cool. I find that the interaction it makes it easier to kind of internalize some of the concepts. So I'm going to go through the kind of the bullet points that we went through, and if you have questions about those, just raise your hand, and I'm gonna go through them at the end. So the first subject matter was your budget. I find that a lot of people who are starting out have difficulty with knowing how to budget their expenses. So you have living expenses, you have business expenses, know how to handle them, add them all up, things like insurance, gear insurance, car insurance, fuel maintenance, things like that. For example, in my household, we put a certain amount of money in a special account that we call health and cars in the bank. So the money goes there every month without even thinking about it. And so that money accumulates until we have something that happened to me in the last 3 weeks, which is the air conditioning broke down, the dishwasher broke down, and the water heater broke down. And so this all added up to an obscene amount of money, especially because I'm unemployed. But we had money set aside. So that's the goal. And of course, we all have to manage ways on how much money we can put away, because it depends on how much money we're making, how busy we are, and stuff like that. But that's a good starting point. Have that on a piece of paper or an Excel worksheet. The next point was operating your business. You have to learn how to communicate. You have to know how to invoice. The first thing that I always hammer home, I'm sure Chris does the same way with the people he mentors, is always separate the labor from the gear. There's 2 separate things. One is an invoice, the other one is a payroll. Even if they're both an invoice, you want to separate them anyway for a number of reasons that I can get into a little later. How to calculate your rental rates and why it's important to uphold proper rates. If you're in a market where you have to interact and maybe even compete with other mixers and other crew members, you have to know where the prices are so that you're not undercutting anybody and so that you're competitive. Also expendables. You have to charge for things that you don't think about immediately or that the client doesn't even know about, like expendables, for example. And also I had a little note about how to upsell your equipment. If you want to charge no less than, let's say, $400 a day for gear, but the stuff that they need is less than that, and they go, well, all I have is $300, but we only need one wire and we only need one of this. Ways in which we can always add things that add value to the gear that don't cost you too much money, but that get you to the point where you can charge the amount of money that you decided is the minimum you want to charge per day. The next bullet point is buying and owning gear. We discussed when to buy a new piece of equipment, whether to buy used or new, how to go about buying new or used, buying gear for a specific project and maybe renting it at the end of, selling it at the end of the project, and also buying gear on credit or leasing equipment if it's a big chunk of money. The next bullet point is your network of colleagues. We are in a community. A second ago, I said you're going to be competing with other mixers. The truth is, I don't like to think that we're competing. I like to think that we're a community and the jobs come to one of us or the other for a number of reasons. But I think we will do much better if we all see ourselves as a community and we can maybe trade jobs off of each other. And it's a whole discussion, but not having a competition, not having a mindset of competition, in my opinion, makes us stronger as a guild, makes us stronger as a community of service providers. And in the network of colleagues, we deal with things such as how to recommend each other for jobs, how to go about it, who to recommend, why, who. We all are very. I have a group of friends among which are, Chris and Doc and other people, and we often trade jobs or recommend jobs to each other. But I may recommend Chris for one job to tomorrow, but then there's another job next week that maybe Doc is better suited for that. And that's perfectly acceptable, perfectly normal, because we all have different strengths and weaknesses, and that's part of the community thing. We don't have to be aware.
Yeah, sometimes
afraid.
It's like casting. You put the right
Exactly.
personality, whatever. Yeah, it's just getting the
Exactly
right.
Right. Exactly right. Thank you. How to, for example, you have a part of being a community with your group of colleagues is that maybe you need a lot of gear for a certain project or for something, or maybe you have a small number, let's say, of Comtex, and then maybe you and another colleague, you maybe buy a bunch of Comtex together, or maybe you buy earwigs together and you decide to have them kind of like rent from each other, things like that. So we discussed that as a way to make our purchases efficient and how we can be, effective and provide services to our clients. Also, we discussed kill fees. The union has predict
Like a threshold.
thank you. Threshold for kill fees. Thank you. That are not particularly generous, but you can always have a deal memo, or maybe if you're working in a non-union environment, you can always have kill fees triggered before or after a certain thing. So that's something that we discussed as well. It was pretty comprehensive, and of course, it's very hard to compress that in these 5 minutes or so. And then we had some tips and takeaways about gear, how not to buy always the latest and greatest, what things it's worth to invest money on, and what things it's maybe better to rent a few times a year, things like that. And then that's it. And so the next point after that, which is what we did 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, was the Q&A. So we're now at that point, and hopefully I didn't go too fast through all of this, but I'd love it if you guys have questions or comments. Okay, great.
Seems very good. Yeah. Very cool.
I want to see, let me go real quick to see if there's any specific thing that I wanted to cover. I think the separating the gear and the labor was kind of key. I hope that's obvious to everybody here. I want to cover the equipment purchase because this is a good way to piggyback off of Doc's segment. I wanted to kind of propose a point of view about gear. Um, mm, in the last, I think, 15 years, there's been truly an explosion of capabilities in the gear. We have now Dante, we have wireless time code, we have wireless that's capable in many ways, UHF wireless and digital wireless. And I think it's very, very tempting to always be updating and upgrading and getting the newest thing. And it's very exciting. And I remember having a discussion with a colleague in which I was saying that I had spent too much money for a certain project or whatever. And I was looking at, doing my window shopping because I needed a certain thing. And then this person said to me, "Oh, a man and his toys." And I said, "I'm sorry, but that is not true. That is wrong. This is not a motorcycle. This is not a hobby. This is not my woodworking black hole in the garage. This is the way how I make a living." It's definitely very exciting, excuse me, that we have new things with capabilities that are that they were unthinkable, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Sorry. But these are tools. And last year I did a very big job, which forced me to get into Dante. Dante is a very exciting technology. It basically allows you to do pretty much unlimited routing through a single, Cat5 cable. It's very exciting. The machines that are capable, sound devices, electrosonics, and Zaxcom make devices that are, out the door. They come capable with Dante. You can do truly amazing things. I can do now a backup recording on Boom Recorder on my laptop, and I can record 15, 16 tracks without a hitch, thanks to Dante. So it's really exciting, but I just didn't need to have it until I had that big job that required 30 tracks of recording. And then things like, for example, the wireless time code. It's very exciting to know that you can set out 5 devices on set, turn them on, and they just automatically, latch on to the time code and everything. But I personally don't find that I need that. I don't find that these are toys. I don't find that just because something is cool, I have to buy it. I think I consider myself frugal, but I also spend some serious money on gear, and I have what I consider a relatively current setup with my recorder, with my main card, and I have chosen not to buy wireless time code because if I have a good team and a good utility that can jam 5 cameras in probably in 2 minutes altogether, having 5 devices that you have to power, that you have to program and make sure that everything is kind of working and everything. But each one of those devices is, I think they're about $1,000 for wireless capable timecode boxes. So in my mind, it's just not worth the money. So the only point I'm trying to make with this little bullet point is that we always have to be thinking about how much farther is our money going to go. In my bag rig, I have a 633. I'm sure the 833 is amazing, but I just haven't had to, upgrade. There's no reason. And so I don't feel bad that the other guy next to me has an 833 and I only have a 633. It does exactly what I need. I also have a 688. So if I need something else or more routing or whatever, I'll go, okay, I'm going to break out the other machine. Everything's okay. But if I get on a job tomorrow where the only thing that does the thing, the only device that does the job is the 833 or whatever the new thing that comes out is, then I will buy it. It's okay. I will do it. I'm just trying to submit to you that the main thing we have to do is always weigh whether it's important for us to buy the new thing or not, and not to just buy the new thing because it's cool or because we have the money and we can afford it. That's it. Thank you. Oh, I see a question here for Tom.
Yeah, I can read it to you. It's from Tom. He's in Philly. He says he's been a mixer full time for 2 years now. And the standard rates in Philly, in the Philly community, have increased to account for inflation, etc. His question: how do I go about raising my rates with the clients who I met when my rates were lower?
I have a couple of things I can tell you. The first one is you can wait until the end of the year, and with those, let's say you have 5 or 10 clients like that, and you can send them a little note, maybe in the first week of December, letting them know that you will be revising your rates come January 1st, and just letting them know that there's going to be an adjustment, whether it's 5% or whatever. And then of those 10 clients, a number of them will say, screw that. And a number of them will say, understood, thank you very much. Let's say 5 of them reply to you, thank you for letting us know, we'll keep in touch. And then when they call you in January or February or whenever they call you, you will apply the appropriate new rate or whatever it is. And then now you know that with those 5 clients, every year, they will be very understanding that you can revise your rates every year. And so every December, you're going to be doing the same thing. Maybe the next adjustment is going to be a little more modest, or maybe you will tailor the adjustment to the economy of the day. Maybe some crazy pandemic is going to stop everything for 3 years, and then you have to make a bigger adjustment or whatever. But I'm talking crazy. It's
that could never happen.
Right. And so that's one way. And the 5 clients who said screw that, they will call you in February, and then you can tell them, hey, and it's there's a lot of a gray area here that only you know how you're dealing with your clients, how they deal with you, how they react to things. And so you'll have to kind of navigate it, and you will have to at that point either tell them, they call you, let's say February, right? So you give them a quote with the revised number, let's say. And they say, well, no, I didn't say it was okay. So give me the old number. You can tell them, hey, I'll give you the old number for this one, but next time it's going to have to be the revised number. And maybe they don't call you again. That's okay. And by the way, clients like that, that's not a relationship. Those clients, we all are hungry. We all want to have clients and have work and be busy. That's completely normal and acceptable. But do understand that clients like that are not a long-term relationship. They just don't really care about you, because they will hang up the phone and call the other guy who's willing to charge them the lower amount, and that's it. I used to have a recording studio, and we did language dubbing in my studio. And I had a client who came in when we were super not busy. And so we made a deal for some like super reasonable rate, and I just had no choice. And we did a number of dubs. We did movie dubs for airlines and stuff like that. And so 2 or 3 years that went on. And one day I said, okay, listen, it's been 2 years, whatever it was. And I want our new project from such and such date to be the prevailing rate. I have proven to you that we know what we're doing. We have been reliable and good. And so the rates are just really very low rates, very reasonable. They have kept the doors open, but I think you know what the real rates are. And so, as of this date, it's going to be this much. Guy never came back again. And I learned later that he did that with all studios around town. He would squeeze studios that needed work for 2 or 3 years, moved on to the next studio. So basically, when he found me because he had dumped the other studio that had raised the rates. And that's his MO. And I was happy to let him go. That's not a client I want to deal with. That's not really a good relationship. Yeah. So let's say you had the clients who said, screw that. They don't even want to talk to you anymore. If they don't call you again, no great loss. I completely understand that you lost 5 clients. I get it. But in the long run, that's not the people you want to have. So of those 5, maybe 3 don't ever call you again. Maybe 2 call you in February and tell you, hey, I know you said you raised your rates, and I know I said screw that, but we really, really need to do this one job. And, give us the old rate. Again, you can make a choice and say, I'll give you this rate one time. And then you do the job, and the invoice says one-time special discount, and you can spell it out in the invoice very, very specifically, so that whoever looks at that invoice there's no mistake what's going on.
One
and so
time,
they will call you
non-precedential.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then they call you again in March or April, and then you offer the proper rate. Eventually, they will either be on board or they will stop calling you, and there's really nothing you can do about that. It's their choice.
I've done this a couple of times over the years with certain clients where I've had to raise rates. And honestly, I've always put when I tell them this, I also tell them, look, I don't expect this to happen in a vacuum. You as a production company should be raising your rates a little bit too. The entire budget of the show should reflect just a tiny bump in increase, from your end. So that way, you're not just paying me more because it's me. Your whole production, everything has gone up now. Inflation's gone up for everybody. So your production budgets as a whole should be reflecting that change as well. So, it's not, I just try to put it in, put that framework around it, because, hopefully they understand they should be doing the same thing with their clients as the producer, as the one putting the budget together, so, and the people that do that, they'll understand that. And so anyway, Heather had a couple of good questions. Heather Gray. Hi, Heather. She said, besides your gear, can you talk about all the other overhead costs you have? CPA, gear insurance, and any other fees or costs you have to pay annually or monthly? And what about percentage of your annual, and about what percentage of your annual expenses does that come to?
Thank you. Hi, Heather. So the last question is really very personal, and I'm not going to answer it because every one of us is in vastly different situations. Some people are renting, some people own a home, some people are still maybe in a roommate situation, different states of solvency, and also styles. We all have different styles. I happen to have a corporation for my business. Some people don't have that. I'm not telling you you have to. It's really very personal. But when I first put this together, it was really meant for people who are starting out, who haven't even kind of started to consider how to go about it. And I'm going through my little outline here. And so I divided it in personal and business expenses. And the personal, and there's more here, but again, this was just a basic example for us to kind of get a grasp on the kind of things you have to think about. So rent or mortgage, groceries, utilities, health insurance, leisure, and savings. All of these things are important. People don't think about savings, or they don't think about leisure, or they say, well, I'm hand to mouth. I can't put any money away. If you are in the position where you can't put money away, maybe you should rethink your living situation or your expense situation so that you can put some money away. You absolutely have to find a way. If you have to go back home and stay with your parents for a few months, do it. Because we have to, first of all, have the habit and the ritual of filling each one of those slots so that that's part of your MO. There's a typical kind of financial advice that they give people. They say, well, if you're making payments on your car, when you make your last payment, then keep making the payments, but not to the car. Just put them in a savings account. So that kind of thing. So you always have some kind of pattern in which money goes somewhere, and you never have this feeling like, oh, I got a big job. Let me go buy a nice fancy car, or let's go to a fancy dinner. You always know that you have to be putting money away to all these things. Usually, it can be done with like a little like a folder, multi-pocket folder thing, or in envelopes. You can just do it in your bank account. I do mobile banking, so you can create as many accounts as you want, and then move money every month or every 2 weeks or whatever into different slots. So the possibilities are very easy, and it's up to you and your style. But yes, savings is very important. Leisure. Most people don't think about leisure. Some people say, well, I'm so badly, I'm not going to have leisure. Well, that's not realistic. You will need leisure. Just be reasonable and figure something out. And by the way, leisure means streaming services, not just going to places and doing things. And also, streaming services can be a business expense because I use streaming services as a form of research. I want to find out what's going on, what kind of TV shows are being made, and all that stuff. So the business expenses would be training and research. Again, streaming is one of those things. Gear amortization. I'll get to that again in a second. Gear maintenance and repair. Gear insurance. And transportation. Transportation could be your vehicle, the van, the fuel, the insurance, the maintenance cost. Again, maintenance. If you have let's say you bought a new van, and for the next 2 years you're not really going to have any expenses except maybe changing the oil and stuff like that. Well, start right away in the habit of putting some money away for that particular car. So the van gets a maintenance account or envelope, or however you want to set it up, so that every month that van you put, let's say, $200 away or $100 away or whatever you can, so that you know that after 12 months, you've put together, let's say you put $100, so $1,200 at the end of the year in case some big thing has to be replaced or fixed or whatever. And if nothing goes wrong with the van, then the money keeps accumulating. So it's a great way to have a contingency ready for you. The gear maintenance, I'm sorry, the gear amortization. Every day that you work with the gear, let's say your basic kit, your basic package, sorry, is a mixer, let's say, a boom, two wireless, and you charge, let's say, $400 a day for that. You should do something where every time you charge for a day of your gear, a certain amount goes somewhere. Maybe $50, maybe 10% of that, maybe $40. So then you have another envelope, and you call that gear amortization. Maybe you're making payments on that gear. So, you may or may not know how many days a month you work with that gear. Let's say you work 6 days a month, $400. That's $2,400 a month in your basic gear package. Well, how much are you paying a month to pay off your equipment? If I don't know, let's say it's $1,000. Okay, $1,000. So know that if you expect to be working approximately 6 days every month, then know that $1,000 of that is going to go to pay off the gear, and there's $1,400 left. And so, what are you going to do with those $1,400? The tendency is to say, "Ooh, I just did 3 days. That's $1,200. Yay!" Um, that is simply not a constructive way of managing your money. I have been very lucky when I have done some big projects in which they pay me part of the project ahead of time. Suddenly there's, $60,000 in the bag. I have never, ever thought to myself, wow, I have $60,000. It's not my money. I don't even think of it as my money. Even if I need money, that money is there to pay for the amortization or for the, whatever that's going on. Never think of yourself when you get money as something that came into your hands. Always go back to the routine of, okay, how much of this is going to amortization? Okay, great. And how much of this is going to the van maintenance cost? Okay, great. Okay, what do I have left? Oh, wow, I only have $300 left. Okay, great. But you are investing in your future. You're investing in financial stability. I don't know if I've covered the question.
Nan has a question from Vancouver. She says, she's asking, do you also charge for a sound van and get the gas covered? If so, how much per day? Up here in Vancouver, Canada, we usually own our own van or trailer and charge per day and get the gas covered around 50 to 75 per day Canadian. So yeah, so do you get your van covered?
I do not. In Los Angeles, I don't know where Nan lives.
Vancouver.
But Canada, Vancouver. Okay, got it. Los Angeles, like Vancouver, is a pretty big city, and we are expected to drive easy 45 minutes each way without a peep. There's something called the studio zone, beyond which you start charging whatever, 63 cents a minute or a mile or whatever. But in general, that's part of my fixed expenses. The fact that I have a van, that it takes gas, and that I have to pay for maintenance and all that stuff is part of my calculation. We're going back to the business expenses, and then the van is one of those expenses. And then what I do is I add up all these expenses, and I say to myself, okay, so between the van and the insurance and the loan payments and the gasoline and the meals and the maintenance and all that stuff, I'm spending, I'm going to throw a number, I have no idea, $400 a month, maybe $500 a month. Okay, so how much do I work on a typical month? Well, I've been working, let's say, 7 days a month. Okay, and what do I invoice typically? Do I only charge typically my basic kit? Is it always $400 a day, or is it more? Sometimes it's more. I have QuickBooks. I do all my invoice through QuickBooks, and I can actually look up my pattern of invoicing and how much money I invoice for things. And I don't know right now the number, but let's say my typical daily thing is not 400. Let's say it's $500 times 7. That's $3,500 a month in equipment rental rates. And so I then have to decide how much of that goes to the van, or how much do I need for the van to be kind of self-sustaining. Remember, I am also making money in payroll. I'm also making money with my labor. So these calculations are very tailor-made to the person. I know that in New York City, people don't have vehicles. They take public transportation. And I know they charge portal to portal. We don't charge portal to portal in Los Angeles. So in New York, they pay tolls if they get a cab, or they pay for the subway, and all of those things are factored in a different way. So the way it works in Los Angeles, it works the way I've described it, and we don't really have a culture of charging for the van. Now, I know that some people who do news work, ENG work for news stations, they get to charge for the van, and that's, I think it's like $50 or $60 a day. But that obviously is a different story. That's not typically what I do. I hope that's answered the question here
Yeah,
with none.
I know for me, yeah, I didn't venture into buying a separate van for my gear. I tried to always keep my technical gear situation to a point where I could move it myself. And I did the same thing. I worked that into my daily rate. I didn't add an extra surcharge for just that. Because there are some shows where where they will come and pick it up in their own truck, and that's fine too. But I always like to have the option of moving it myself, because sometimes you just want to be able to load up and drive away, and it helps. And I bought a Honda Element 12 years ago now, 2010, 13 years ago. So, and it's still going strong. So, that part of it affected that, as well. But yeah, I've never been one to charge a separate surcharge for it. I always felt like, though, if I got a whole dedicated van, then yeah, my rates would have to go up to reflect that. If they didn't go up, then I would have to charge separately for it. But either way, it's getting paid for somehow. So Jeff, what's up?
Yeah, Blas, I was listening to everything you were saying up to a point.
Finally, somebody listens to me.
A lot of it doesn't apply to me. First of all, because I'm retired, and second of all, because I incorporated very, very early in my career, and learned the ropes that way. But did you discuss the tax advantages also? Because that's the other thing that figures into it. I think that tremendous benefit to me was the fact that the corporation handled so many of the things that I would normally have to just handle in my regular daily life. And I used to sort of joke that, it was a deduction. Anything that plugged in or took batteries was a deduction. But also, going to movies or streaming services, or, remodeling my shop, any of those things, they were all business expenses. And the big one for me was that I incorporated in 1981, and from 1981 up until retiring in 2015 or whatever, every single job I did went through the corporation, including all of my labor. Now that's very rare, because most people, they end up having to be on payroll, for a studio or for whatever. But so I had control over my individual income, because I had no individual income except what my corporation would write me as a salary.
We didn't really get into that, and thank you for bringing it up, Jeff. I do have a corporation as well, and I like to be on payroll, especially for union jobs, because with signatory productions, that covers my health and pension benefits. And so I normally invoice if it's only if I'm hired as a payroll person for the production. That's obviously my labor goes there, and then I invoice for the equipment separately.
The corporation handles the equipment. Yeah, right.
Exactly. And
that's a good way to go. I mean, I will say that it was very, very difficult all those years, incorporated and wanting my labor to go through as a loan out, because they just did not want to do it for sound people. Exactly, they were doing it for the cameraman occasionally. They were doing it for production designers, people like that. Sound people. And then, Don Sufol, my boom operator, he incorporated, and they really said, no, we got to draw the line somewhere. We're not going to pay a corporation, but they did. But there's also a lot of jobs we just couldn't do, or we would have to do them, on regular payroll.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what I have is I have a salary. Every month, my company pays me a salary. And if I am on a longer term project, then the company lays me off.
right.
And
You
then
don't have to write the salary. Yeah.
exactly. And so
Yeah.
I get hired for, 4 months, 5 months, whatever it is. And then once that's over, then the company starts paying me my salary again. If the project is non-union, then I invoice for everything. And that includes obviously any overtime or whatever. I have a deal memo, which we should all have, in which it's all spelled out. And I realize that if you're just starting out now, some of this may be daunting because it seems like layers of bureaucracy and complication. But I didn't start like this. It kind of grew into this thing. Once you become more experienced and getting, a bigger variety of projects and bigger projects, then you kind of learn to. And I also have amazing mentors. Jeff has been
Yeah.
one of my mentors for a long
The-
time, and you learn from other people on how to do it. And
Oh,
somebody, yeah,
I was just saying when I incorporated, I was one of only 2 or 3 sound mixers that incorporated, and everyone was against it. The studios were against it, and all that. And I had to become an IA signatory, and I had
right,
to pay into my own pension, health, and welfare 54 hours a week, whether I was working or not. And talk
yeah,
about being punitive. It still worked out because there were some laws that were passed, primarily because of some of the lawsuits that we were involved in, that I could work, everything could go through the corporation, but I was still treated as an employee, and all the pension benefits and everything, all that was paid. And there was no problem in terms of the health plan or any of that stuff. So it all kind of got good. But there were still studios that said, we will not pay a corporation, period.
there's still some of
Warner
that.
Brothers was one of them. And the only way I got paid properly, I almost couldn't do The Last Samurai, because they were insisting on me using Warner Brothers equipment, which I wouldn't do. Then they said, we will not pay your loan out. And we certainly would not pay the loan out or make the rate that your boom operator wants. Tom Cruise had to go to the head of Warner Brothers. And Tom said, these are my guys. Don't mess with. Well, he was an executive producer, So, but, I had to do those things over the years, and it wasn't fun, but it kept, I certainly got to hang on to a lot of my money, so.
Well, that's good. Hey, there's a couple of things in the chat that I just want to bring up to your attention. Heather Gray was asking, when you're talking about corporations, are you talking about an S Corp? And Abraham also asked, how would you recommend setting up your business? INC, LLC, or other? I know some of those conversations need to happen between just them and the accountant. But when you're referring to the corporations for you guys, is it S Corp or what type is it? C Corp?
Mine was a full, I guess, S Corp, they call it.
S
Yeah.
Corp.
Mine's an S corporation, and I would not attempt to answer that question because
No.
every
Understandable.
financial situation is different.
Yeah. But bottom line is, incorporating there are some expenses involved.
Oh, absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
maintenance expenses, but they were far outweighed by the benefit, at least for
Yeah.
me.
Very
Exactly.
good.
For
Yeah. And Doc
only
answered-
40 years.
Yeah, Doc answered that in the chat where he said, that's definitely between you and your accountant. So that's definitely good advice. Thank you, Doc. And we have a question from Devin Cook. What's up?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could speak to, you said you had a deal memo, and obviously producers always come with their own deal memos. I'm just wondering if you can speak to the process of sort of negotiating between those two and how that happens. And if you can also address the issue of, I guess, scope and scale, because a lot of, sometimes I'm doing a day or two here and there, and I don't bother negotiating, all the bottom lines for those. But once I get above, it's either 4 or 5 days, I find it's worth it. But I'd love to hear what you have to say about negotiating or rectifying your terms with the terms that come from the producer.
Yeah. Every deal memo has to have a number of basic points. Among them, the term, meaning how long it's going to be, or the schedule. The terms, meaning the payment and how the payment is going to be structured, and a description of the job, what kind of gear is needed, basically, what setting it's going to be filmed in, that kind of thing. And then the fourth element, which I think is the most, maybe not the most important, but it's very important, it's to weigh equally the responsibilities and the rights of both parties. So if you get a deal memo from a producer and everything about it, and if you've ever signed or had to sign or were given a deal memo from Disney or from Sony or one of these big corporations, you realize that some lawyer or lawyers wrote it in kind of like in gotcha mode. Like, how are the ways in which we're not going to be fucked by this guy? And then they send you that. And that is not the productive way to have a relationship. And the first thing I should have said earlier that I don't want to forget to say is that, remember, the deal memo is there for the divorce, not for the wedding. So when we're all getting along and when we're all great and we know that we're going to make the best movie together, we don't need a deal memo. We know we love each other. This is awesome. We just want to make the best Citizens Kane, Citizen Kane, a movie that can possibly be made. But it's in the the devil is in the details. When you get to the job and you start having frictions, and now you say, no, you did it. No, you did it. It's your fault, my fault. That's when the deal memo really is important, not when you're lovey-dovey with the other guy. But anyway, the deal memo has to have both carrots and sticks, and it has to be structured in such a way in which it says, I promise not to show up drunk. I promise to show up on time. I promise to keep all the secrets. I promise to behave professionally and not hit on the young actresses and all those things. But I also want you to pay me on time and to treat me with respect and to tell me when there are changes in the schedule, blah, 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 blah. So when you receive, I normally ask the production company whether they have a deal memo or if they want me to put something together. And the answers vary. But when, let's say, they say, no, we have something, they send it to me, I know right away what I'm dealing with. I personally am not shy about striking things. When they write too many restrictive or the tone, you can tell by the tone. The tone is just wrong. Things like, for example, you rescind any rights for your likeness and your thing because they're going to be filming behind the scenes or whatever. Sometimes I let it go. Sometimes I say, no, these people are being jerks about everything. Well, they're not going to have my likeness. Strike that. Or then, I don't know, they call me and they say it's going to be an 8-hour day, but they hired me on a 12-hour day. I will say, well, we say 8 hours. And the rate that we discussed was for 8 hours. Strike that. I can't think of any examples other than that right now. But don't be shy about striking things. And you send it back stricken. And depending on your relationship with the person that hired you, you may or may not tell them, by the way, there's a few things I revised. You may want to take a look. If they're truly jerks, but you still will do the job, I just send it back and don't say anything. And 99% of the time, they don't even notice that you struck things out. Not that you're being deceiving. It's their due diligence to notice that you struck things out. But again, it's all about how the relationship is. If you make your own deal memo, make sure that you are respecting those two forces, that you're giving them a reason to believe that you're thinking about their best interest, and that you're going to do your due diligence to make sure that you're going to do your best job for the project, and also cover every eventuality. If there's any travel, car travel, whatever it is, make sure you put in there anything beyond 50 miles, and everything is negotiable. Everything is something subject to a line in the contract. If I work with somebody for the first time, especially if they're from out of town or out of the country, I will offer the deal memo no matter what, even if it's a 1-day, 6-hour interview. The payments, usually, if I really don't know them or if they came completely without any relationship or recommendation from a colleague or another client, I will say, well, I expect payment at the end of the day with a PayPal or you know, a bank transfer or whatever. I really have not had bad experiences. I've had a handful, but nothing really. I don't walk around paranoid that I'm not going to get paid. But it's good to kind of, you know that they may leave and you don't ever see them again, and that's not a pleasant situation. If there is a company with which I've worked before, and again, it's a one-day thing, and this is the fourth time they call you, and everything went swimmingly, I don't have to do the deal memo anymore. Now we have a different relationship. If you're getting hired in a big union project, then that's kind of moot because they hire you as a payroll. You have to fill out a bunch of paperwork and maybe attend one too many sexual harassment videos. But that's a simpler thing. It gets complicated when it's non-union, when it's corporate, when it's like a one-off thing. And I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, very good. I did want to clarify something earlier. You said usually in LA we work, what is it? We don't work portal to portal in LA. The only time we actually do work portal to portal on union stuff really is when we're shooting outside the zone. If we have to drive outside the zone, then it'll be portal to portal. But usually, yeah, for us it's crew parking to crew parking. Now I've worked on a couple of productions over the years that are really sneaky about shooting in the very vast portions of Southern California, and they'll put crew parking just inside the zone, and then you have to take a crew van from there another 20 minutes sitting in traffic, whatever, to get to the out of the zone. But that gets them back into, or at least they claim that gets them back into paying crew parking to crew parking, and they avoid paying your hour and a half time to get you to set. So that's always a sneaky one when they do that.
That's shady.
Yeah, that's
Devin, were you okay with my answer, Devin?
Yeah, if I have time for follow up, I would ask,
Please.
how do you create the space to have I guess a discussion when the terms differ? I find, I mean, I've struck out most commonly. There's a company in town here that always puts a power of attorney clause in their contracts, which is ridiculous. So I always strike that out. But it's like you say, it's, you kind of just cross it out and then it goes away. And
they
I'm
want
looking
a power of attorney for what?
It's a good question.
Like they want you to give them a power of attorney on your
behalf, for modifications of the contract, which to me is absolutely fucking not.
No. No. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense
But
at all.
it's buried in a 20-page deal memo that you're being required to sign the day that you get to set.
I mean, I doubt that would even be enforceable. I mean, I don't know how
Right,
it
exactly.
works, but I don't see any kind of a judge that would see something like that buried in a deal memo to be legal.
That's kind of beside. I guess I'm coming from an experience where I was working in an established relationship, so thankfully it was a good relationship. But I had a situation where there was a disagreement over whether and how much travel was charged, and I always just charge travel automatically. That is my blanket policy, and I've worked for this producer before. He knows that. But it became a point of contention, particularly for the boom op that I hired. And I'm just wondering what's a better way to make sure that discussion is had and is clear. So well, it didn't happen with just my deal memo that I sent them.
So they accepted the deal memo, but when you charged according to the deal memo, they had a bone to pick.
I mean, it was a dispute over how much my boom op was charging for travel.
But that was included in the deal memo. Whatever your boom op was doing was already predicted in the deal memo. Well, I think it's just a matter of human communication. I would just, in which form did they complain? In a phone call or how?
Well, they refused to honor the travel that the boom op was charging.
It's a matter of goodwill, good faith and goodwill. I would just call them and say, listen, if you look at the deal memo, this was predicted in the deal memo, and this is according to that. And so, what are you objecting to exactly? And if they tell you, to pound sound or whatever, then pound sand or not, tell them or finish the job and know not to work for them again, or I mean, it's really hard. And again, it all depends on the relationship you have with the person that hired you. I would go maybe to the person who hired you, like the one with whom you have an actual relationship, and tell them, listen, I mean, this is very uncomfortable. I don't want to be contentious, but I mean, there's a deal memo that you guys agreed to, and now the money person is refusing to pay. I mean, I really don't know where to go from here because this was agreed to. I mean, if there's an issue with that, we should deal with that next time, and then maybe readjust or not or whatever. But you can't refuse to pay something that you and you received. I'm assuming an signed copy of the deal memo before the job.
Yeah, I did.
They really don't have. I mean, I don't mean to be a lawyer, but
short of creating a lawsuit, which it's not
exactly
really
yeah,
worth
yeah.
my time to do.
No, I would just talk to the person and in those terms tell them, listen, this is uncomfortable, but this is according to the deal memo. So what are they objecting to? And then, I mean, then it becomes a matter of communication. The other way to solve this is that next time, if you know that that's an issue, I would maybe put that in bold or maybe send them. And once they sign, you tell them, by the way, just to confirm, these terms are, you agreed to them according to article such and such. The boom up gets the same hours, whatever. Just want to make sure that there's no issue with this going forward.
Yeah, my way of dealing with it is I've created a one-page PDF that I now send out to all my producers. That is, here are the important points. Please flag if any of these don't sound right.
That's the best you can do, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I've run into this problem too every now and then, especially on bigger shows that have pattern budgets. Occasionally, when you have a different person doing payroll, they will. I mean, they're not necessarily, they know your deal terms and that kind of stuff, but they'll kick back anything that doesn't look like it did the last 10 times they did it. And they're trained to see patterns. And then when there's a deviation from the pattern, they will then stop the process, and it all just has to get, yes, that was true. Yes, this is why it's different. I mean, a lot of times they're like that guy in Game of Thrones who runs the big library, and he just sits there and he goes, this is irregular, and that's just how they are. So it's sometimes just a matter of culture when it comes to payroll people, because they know they're cutting the check. I've had to go through back into the layers of this. They have a paymaster. They have this whole system of how funds get released. And sometimes, deal memos, when you've negotiated something different that they're not used to in their pattern budget, you'll have to go through that once, maybe. But hopefully you don't have to go through it again. And so usually when they're talking to you, it's like, they weren't privy to making the deal, but they just know that we've never paid this before. So why are we doing it now? And so, yeah, so it's just a layer. It's bureaucracy that you have to work through.
And this reminds me of another issue that I encounter sometimes. When I get hired for some kind of interview day or it's like a one-day thing, and they tell me, oh, it's going to be 6 hours, 7 hours top. And they ask me to quote them a number, and I tell them, well, it's going to be this much for 10 hours. Or if it's truly like a 5-hour thing, I tell them, well, I can charge you, I can quote you an 8-hour day, and I give them a number. And so then they send me the deal memo, and it's for 12 hours. So I call them and I go, well, it's not 12, it's 8 hours. And they go, yeah, but it's going to be a super short day. I promise you, you're not going to be there even 5 hours. I said, okay, great, then let's call it 8 hours. No, but we do our accounting in 12 hours. Now, it is true often that it is a 5 or 6 hour day. It is true that, it's going to be, nobody's lying to me. I'm not concerned with them lying to me. What I'm concerned about is that the accountant who's doing that paperwork is going to see my rate, and my hourly rate for 12 hours is not the same as my hourly rate for an 8-hour day. The hourly rate that I quoted for 8 hours could be, let's say, $65 an hour. But if they break that down into 12 hours, it suddenly becomes, I don't know, $48 an hour. I don't charge $48 an hour. I charge $65 an hour. And so I tried to explain this to them, and they're often forceful. And resist the temptation of letting go and saying, that's fine, I'll let it go. Because they will call you months later and they will offer you $48 an hour. And then it's going to be hard for you at that point to explain to them, what do you really charge, or to negotiate yourself up from that.
Nice. Very good. Well, we're at noon now. We'll wrap it up. Any last questions? Thank you, Blas, for everything. This is very, very cool. And I remember, you know, if anybody's got questions, let us know. But I'll tell you guys now, it was pretty cool when Blas first came up to me with this idea. We were doing our first flea market, and Blas came up to me like, "Hey, I want to rent a table, but I don't have anything to sell." I'm like, "So why do you want to get a table?" And he's like, "Well, I want to talk to people about organizing their business and about how they're negotiating, about because people need to talk about this." So he literally repurposed that event so he could have a table where he could talk to people. He printed out flyers, in written materials, and there was a steady crowd of people around his table the whole time we were
And
there.
now you can do it without the table, right?
Yes. So, I mean, this is where, you know, he stepped up and said, this is something we need to talk about. And I just, you know, want to say this, we probably would not have be hitting this subject with this kind of depth without his influence and his zeal for the topic. And I really appreciate it, because I was honestly, there was a subject that I was uncomfortable talking about on my own accord, because I'm not an accountant. I'm not, you know, I'm married to a lawyer. She does everything. She's great. I'm not the one to talk to about this kind of stuff, but Blas absolutely is, and is really, really good at that. So thank you, Blas,
Thank you.
For doing that.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, because it has such a profound effect on your quality of life. You know, being able to have those skills, besides being a good sound person, you know, having those skills to manage your money.
So as we wrap this up, though, I have to let you know, I hold in my possession now photographic proof that Gary Bourgeois worked in production sound. And he was like, he sent them to me. He said, be sure and share these. And I'm like, are you sure? Because I will share.
Yes. I gotta see this.
Share the, okay, so there's two pictures. Here is this one. You guys see that? There he is on the left, right? I think that's him on the left, holding his machine and doing that stuff. Now, this is an okay picture, but this one is the Pièce de Résistance right here. Where is it? Here we go. Y'all see that one?
Yep.
The shirtless boom pick.
Yep.
That's him with the handlebar mustache.
I feel very warm suddenly.
That's cool. I mean, I remember there was a lot in the 70s, 80s. A lot of people worked shirtless on set. That never happens anymore. But guys back then, I mean, everybody remembers the pink shorts guy.
There's a good reason, Chris. There's a good reason.
Ken Nightingale from Star Wars, you know, shirtless and the pink shorts. That was such a common thing back then. But yeah, not so much anymore. Anyway, he wanted me to share those with everybody, so I
unsure.
Yes, and stop share. Anyway, thought that was pretty funny. Anyway, thank you, Gary Bourgeois, for sending those and sharing. But he did, in fact, work in production, and I am tickled by the sudden lack of commentary by everybody in the room. That's hilarious to me.
We're out of words.
Speechless.
There it is. So anyway, thanks a lot. It's coming up. We're gonna have the new the August issue of the LA Sound Mixer newsletter is going to be coming out soon. Thank you to K-Tech for sponsoring this and our other events. That's why they're always free. So please come out and see us. We have the flea market coming up September 9th. You can still register as a seller, but if you want to show up, just go to the Eventbrite link and register as a buyer. I'm sorry, as a buyer. Yeah, as a buyer. And we'll be happy to have a spot for you. It'll be a lot of fun. And we do our Lawless Brewery meetup the last Monday of every month in North Hollywood, and that's always free to join as well. It's a good time. There's a lot of the younger people show up to that one. We have a few of the old timer regular guys that show up there, which is so great to have them. But it is a lot of younger people that are showing up and building their networks step by
And
step.
also the business agent and
Yeah,
assistant show up very often, which is great to see.
that's pretty cool. Yeah, Scott Bernard and Casey from the office, along with Joe.
And Joe Aritas as well.
Yeah, they'll show up and just chat with all the new people coming in. It's really great to see. So you know, keep an eye out for that. And yeah, thank you so much for coming. Next, I don't know if it's going to be the next month's chat or the chat after that. But I want to do like a cart and bag chat. So I want people to get ready for that. Send us pictures if you can of your cart and bag rigs. We'd love to go over them to see what people are doing. You can email them to lasoundmixer@gmail.com. And then we'll pull them up and then we can chat about it. I still need to talk with Doc about this. But the idea is to do an online event where we can just kind of see each other's cart builds. I don't know if people want to run a camera around their rig for us. Maybe we can set that up. But
yeah, and if anybody wants like a historical, fairly historical record, also, you know, the gallery of sound carts, which you can get to on JW Sound,
yes,
you know, has hundreds and hundreds of you know, amazing pictures of people's carts, and it's a good starting point.
that was such a great resource when I was building my first cart. I combed through that gallery.
Oh yeah,
everything.
Yeah. Even if you just see the way somebody did the back wheels, you know, a certain way that you know, and I wish I could actually document each one of them more thoroughly. Some of them I have no documentation on at all, but I at least try and get the name associated with the person so you can follow it up.
Yeah,
but,
the name and the year would be good.
And we started the gallery so long ago that there's a lot of carts that are just like ancient history now. But
yeah, but these are all the building blocks that got us to where we are now. So it's a very important part. But yeah, I don't know if it'll be September or if it'll be October, but I want to plan that. And we're also I'm working with one of our local vendors to organize an in-person event too. Someplace where we can just now, because we're still in a strike mode, and if that's still going on, you know, maybe we can just bring our rigs out to you know, a public space somewhere and just kind of treat it like a car show where we just kind of walk around and
like the parade of sound cars that we do every year.
I'll try and do a little different, something, you know, something else. But yeah, I hosted that event a couple of times, but no, I want to do something different. I don't want to do any kind of a presentation or anything. It's literally just like a car show where you show up and people just talk to each other.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, and it's something for the local community. So, but yeah, so that's in the works. So if you want to participate in that, send us pictures of the rig, and lasoundmixer@gmail.com is the place to send it to. And I'm gonna put my heads together with you know, the local community here, and we'll see how we can put that together. But we definitely want to have it here on this chat at least once, and then maybe have an in-person event here in LA. At the same time.
Doc just said we should hold it at Bob's Big Boy. Absolutely. Takes me back to my high school.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, well, if it happens in October.
I was with the sports car group, you know, so we had our own sort of marginalization of, you know, because it really was dominated by the hot rodders, but
very good.
It was fun.
Well, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording, but we can hang out and chat for a little more. But thank you for coming. Y'all guys take it easy.